welcome to Wednesday on the Hook part 2 of the Corner to Corner baby blanket. And today we're going to take a look at what we've done. We've created two sides, and this here is the bottom side of our blanket, and this is one of the sides of our blanket running up here. So now, if you were using a medium 4 weight yarn, then 30 rows was definitely enough for your increasing rows. I use the Bernat baby coordinates, and it is an actual light 3 weight yarn. So 30 rows was not enough to create the width that I wanted. So let me show you what I mean. So starting from my foundation chain right there, all the way to that green safety pin, that was my 30 rows. And as you can clearly see, that would not have been a width. That would have been great for a baby, maybe a baby doll. So since this was a lightweight 3 yarn, I ended up doing 50 rows to give it the width that I was looking for a baby blanket. So if you need to, go ahead and stop this video at this time and add the rows that you need to give your blanket the width that you want, because what you see on this bottom part, that is going to be the width of your blanket, because today we're going to start building this side up from here. So this is going to be the width of my baby blanket, and that is perfect for this light 3 weight. If you've used again a medium 4 weight, that 30 rows should have been enough. But if you want your blanket to be a little bit wider, then go ahead and add the rows that you need to make your blanket the width that you want, and then catch back up with us. So if you're ready to go on, go ahead and grab your hooks, grab your project, grab your lotion. Those are the only things you're going to need today. Go ahead and get some lotion and moisturize those hands and keep them hydrated, because after all, they are the most important part of our project. And I'll meet you over at the craft table. The only other item that you're going to need for today's tutorial is some type of stitch marker, and I will explain that more in just a minute. So just make sure you have one on hand. Now, if you're looking at your blanket, and I have mine upside down, but if you're looking at it, it kind of gives the resemblance of a shawl. But right here, this is the bottom half of the blanket. And again, mine's backwards because I've got it ready to start the tutorial. And then this part here is working up the side of the blanket. And this is the bottom part, okay? So today, we're going to actually start decreasing and building this side of the blanket. So we're going to begin building that rectangular build. So right now, it resembles a shawl, but after today, we're going to start building up this side. And then next week, we will finish completing this side of the blanket, as well as creating the top part of the blanket. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're at the very end of the last row. And for this tutorial, we're going to call this row 30. Even though I did 50 and you may have done more than 30, for the tutorial purpose, we're going to call it row 30. So at the end of row 30, you have finished all your increasing rows of adding a block. We're now going to chain 1, and we're going to turn our blanket, and we're now going to begin doing our decreasing row. Now, for this next section, we're going to have a decreasing side and we're going to have an increasing side, and that is just for the rectangular build of this blanket. So for this decreasing side, after you've chained one and turned, we're going to work a slip stitch into each of the 3 double crochets that you did on the previous row in that last block. So just go ahead and slip stitch across those 3 double crochets, and then in that chain 3 space you're going to slip stitch, you're going to chain 3, and then you're going to work 3 double crochets right into that chain 3 space. So all this should be familiar. And this here is beginning to build the perpendicular side to our blanket. Now, we want to keep up with which side is our decreasing side. And since this is our decreasing side, and you'll see why in a minute, why that's important as we get going. So let's go ahead and take our stitch marker and put it right into that chain 3 space there. And then let's go back. And we're going to continue working row 31 just as we have been, slip stitching into that chain 3 space, chaining 3, and working 3 double crochets. And let's do one more. Slip stitch into the chain 3 space, chain 3, and work 3 double crochets. And you're going to do that all the way across row 31. So when you're done, because we did not add a block, okay, we did not add a block like we had been, when you get back across, you're going to have 30 blocks across this row. So continue working across the row, and I will meet you at the end, and I will tell you how to begin the next row. So just go ahead and continue working your slip stitch into the chain 3, chaining 3, and working 3 double crochets all the way across. When you have reached the end of this row and you've made the last block, we are now going to begin the next row. This side of your blanket is the actual side that is still going up this way. So we have begun creating our blanket, this way, as in the shape of an L. We've completely finished the bottom length of our blanket, our bottom width. Now we're working on this length over here. So in order to continue with the length over here, we're going to have to continue on this side of the blanket, increasing to continue getting that height. So in order to do that, we're going to do it just like we had before, and we're going to chain 6. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to work our double crochet into that 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then work the 3rd or the last double crochet into that 6th chain from the hook. And sometimes with this lighter yarn it's a little bit tricky. And then just like we had before, we're going to take our blanket and we're going to turn it, and going right into the last block from the previous row, we're going to slip stitch into it. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to work our 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. And then we're going to continue across this row just as we have been, slip stitching into that chain 3 space, chaining 3, and working 3 double crochets. So continue working that pattern all the way across this row, and I will meet back up with you. When you get to the end of this row, you're back to the side that we marked to be the decreasing side. So that means that we are not going to add a block to the end of this row because we're decreasing. So we're going to slip stitch into that last chain 3 space, and that is going to end that row. We're going to chain 1, we're going to turn our work, and we're going to slip stitch in these 3 double crochets from that last block that we created. We're going to slip stitch into that chain 3 space, and then we're going to chain 3, and we're going to work 3 double crochet into that chain 3 space. And if you look, it is now creating that side edge, and see how flat it is? So now we're going to take our little stitch marker here. Oops, gotta be careful. And we're now going to insert it in this one. So every time we come to the side with the stitch marker, we know that that's a decreasing round where we're going to slip stitch across those 3 and not create another block. So we're going to go back across the row just like we normally would. Chain 3, and do 3 double crochet into that chain 3 space. And then just keep working. And as you can see, now that we've started that, you can kind of see, let me clear everything away. So we're laying flat on this surface. And you can see how this is now creating that flat side. So as we continue decreasing on the decreasing side, our side is going to continue to go up like this. Now, we're going to continue working those last 2 rows. And on the end over here where we're adding a block, we're going to keep doing that until our blanket is the height that we want. Now, let me see. Push my little mat out the way here a minute. I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it out the way so I can kind of spread the blanket out and hopefully be able to show this to you. So this is the bottom side of your blanket, okay? Over here is where we're beginning our decreasing rows, where we slip stitch across the 3 to start building this side. Over here, here's the bottom, is building this side. So we're going to continue alternating these 2 rows of decreasing on this side, adding a block up here to continue creating this side. When you get your blanket now, we did our blanket to create the width that we wanted. Now we're going to work on repeating those 2 rows to complete the height of the blanket that we want. So we have now done 2 rows where over here on row 31 we slip stitched across the 3, slip stitched into the chain 3 and made a new block, and continued all the way down here to this side where we created a new block with the chain 6 and worked a double crochet in the 4th, 5th, and 6th chain from the hook, turned it and added it to the previous block. And then we crocheted all the way back across until we got to the decreasing side again. On the decreasing side, after we chain 1 and we turn, we slip stitched across the 3, slip stitched into the chain 3 spot, and created a new block. And we're going to do that all the way back across. And when we get down here, we're going to slip stitch into this chain 3 here. We're going to chain 3, put 3 double crochets in there, and then we're going to chain 6, and then we're going to crochet in the 4th, 5th, and 6th chain. Then we're going to turn our work and we're going to slip stitch it to attach it to the previous block. Then we're going to come all the way back down here and we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to start over. We're going to slip stitch into the first 3, slip stitch into the chain 3 spot, and we're going to create a block. And we're going to keep doing that until we have the height that we want on this side panel for our blanket. Okay? When you reach the height that you want, that's where you're going to stop. And then we'll come back next week, and at that point we'll continue with decreasing, except then we're going to decrease on both this side over here where we already started, and then we're going to start decreasing up here to start creating the blanket, to create the top of our blanket. So to finish off this week, you're going to go ahead and work those 2 rows repeating until you get your blanket the height that you want. Now we've already done 2 rows, so I am probably, because my blanket is actually getting to a really nice size height already. But for me, remember, I did 50 rows to start with. So right now I currently have 52 rows completed, and over here when I started this row, I'm starting my 53rd row. So I am probably going to only do my middle portion of my blanket probably about 8 more rows, so that the body build of my blanket, I only did 10 rows. So I'm going to continue for this week, repeating those last 2 rows, which are equivalent to row 31 and 32. And just one more time, just so I make sure that you understand. And if you have any questions, just leave me a message in the comment section and I'll answer any questions you have. But I just want to make sure that you're understanding the instructions that are left. So on our decreasing side, which is where we're at, when you get to the end here, you're going to just slip stitch into that last block. You're not going to chain 3 and do 3 double crochets, because then you would end up giving yourself an extra block and you want to square it off. So you're just going to slip stitch into that chain 3 space and chain 1. Then you're going to turn your work and you're going to slip stitch into the 3 double crochets of that last previous block. Slip stitch into the chain 3 space, chain 3 and do 3 double crochets, and then work that all the way across in each chain 3 space. When you get over here to the side that does not have the stitch marker, you're going to continue creating a block so you can continue creating this perpendicular side, and you're going to do it just like you have been. After you work your last block into this chain 3 space, you're going to chain 6. You're going to work a double crochet in the 4th, 5th, and 6th chain from the hook. You're going to turn your work and you're going to slip stitch into the chain 3 space to connect it to the previous block. Work it all the way back across until you come back down to this decreasing side. And again, in the very last block, you're just going to slip stitch, chain 1, turn your work, and slip stitch back across the 3. So just to make sure that I am leaving you feeling confident about the blanket, I am going to include a slide right here that will have the written instructions so that you can have that to follow. And that way you can be successful in completing the rectangular build of your blanket. And then next week, we'll come back for part 3 and we'll continue decreasing this side of our blanket and building this side. And at that point, we'll actually start decreasing over here, which will actually start creating our blanket going across. And then the 4th week, we'll come back and we'll actually put a border around our corner to corner blanket. So until next Wednesday, take care, be joyful, stay crafty in your own way, and continue making your corner to corner blanket and your own joyful creations. Bye.